Make America Healthy Again is definitely the one that hits home hardest for me. That's the one that motivates me. I want to be able to go to the grocery store and I want to know that the food that I'm buying is not covered in chemicals. I want to know that they didn't slip in a vaccine in the lettuce. I want to make sure that the vaccines that families go to get for their children are safe. I want to know that the rules should be in place, that people should be accountable for what they do. I want to make sure that when I go breathe the air outside, that I'm not just breathing in a bunch of metals and toxins from the chemicals and chemtrails that are sprayed across the sky, landing on our food. I get fired up about making America healthy again. So, what is the first and most aggressive way that you would advise President Trump to make America healthy again? What would be that first step that you think would make the biggest difference that you would advise him?
The one thing that is making America sick is corruption in the regulatory agencies. The agencies that are supposed to be protecting public health are not doing that. Instead, their primary priority is the mercantile and commercial interests of pharmaceutical companies, of big food and big agriculture. And they are utterly corrupt from at least the top part of those agencies, completely corrupt. And President Trump has asked me for help unraveling the corporate capture of those agencies, unraveling this corrupt merger of state and corporate power. And we've already put together a team to move into USDA, to move on day one. And save the soils in our country, and to end these. Almost all of our subsidies are going to corn, soy, and wheat, and these become the feedstock for this. We're producing food that is no longer nutrient dense. It's nutrient anemic, and it's creating. And it is the food that is the cheapest, so it becomes the feedstock for the ultra-processed food industry. And that food is the food, 70% of the food that is paid for by food stamps. So it gets a subsidy, agricultural subsidies, and it gets the food stamp subsidy, $70 billion a year, to poison American poor with. It gets the school lunch program, 70% of that is going to ultra-processed foods. And we are systematically sickening our children. And the greatest asset, the most valuable asset in our country today, if you're an insurance company, if you're part of the medical complex, hospitals, et cetera, if you're a pharmaceutical company, the most valuable asset is a sick child. And that's why our kids are the sickest kids in the history of the world, and the sickest of any country. We have these raft of neurological disorders that I never saw as a kid: ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, sleep disorders, ASD, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, autism. We have autoimmune disease, explosion, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, all these exotic things that didn't exist. Diabetes. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw one case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walk through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And all the allergic diseases, peanut allergies, food allergies, eczema, asthma, anaphylaxis. Obesity. When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease, and the price for treating chronic disease at that point was $0. Today, 60% of Americans have it, of our kids. And the cost is $4.3 trillion. It's 5 times our military budget. And when I was a kid, my uncle was president, 3.4% of Americans had obesity. Today, close to 70%. And it is destroying our country. We have the lowest fertility rate in the world. 50% of American teens have half the testosterone that they had a generation ago, half the sperm counts they had a generation ago. Girls in our country are reaching puberty at 10 years old to 13 on average. That's 6 years younger than they were a generation ago. And it's the youngest of any country in the world. And this is happening not because Americans suddenly got lazy. It's happening because we are mass poisoning people. Obesity is not genetic. It's not your fault. It's because we are mass poisoning you. And we need to put an end to it. And on day one, we're going to declare an emergency like we did in COVID. But it's going to be a chronic disease emergency, and we're going to get the fluoride out of the water. We're going to get the chemicals out of the food. We're going to get the chemtrails out, the chemicals out of the chemtrails, and there's 1,000 ingredients in our food that are banned in Europe. And we're going to get rid of all those chemicals. And I know how to do it, and
so I want to go through just a little role playing here for a second. Imagine for just a moment every single one of you were gathered on the floor of the House of Representatives and you were all members of Congress. And you have a bill that comes before you for a vote that would make it so that frozen pizza qualifies under the daily nutritional requirements of fruits and vegetables for kids in public schools. How many of you would vote yes? How many of you would vote no? This happened. This was one of the first votes that I took as a member of Congress. Exactly. That was my face, too. First of all, this is what Congress is doing. And I had conversations with a lot of people on the House floor that day who'd been there a lot longer than I had, asking the question you're probably thinking is, how in the world does this happen? And why are our members of Congress doing the work of the big manufacturers that make these frozen pizzas that go into our school cafeterias? Bobby talked about corruption. And he talked about the influence of big money in our regulatory agencies and in our politics. They are very directly connected. Does anyone want to guess? I mean, obviously I voted no. Do you think it passed or failed? This is what we're dealing with here. And this is why what we are doing here tonight matters so much. In who we elect as president, as someone in Donald Trump who's committed to rooting out this corruption and bringing Bobby Kennedy onto his team to actually execute this. And you saw Sam Brown here who's running for U.S. Senate here in Nevada. It's having people in the House and the Senate who are committed to this same cause. What does Make America Healthy Again actually means? It's things like this. It's things like friends of mine who are going for treatment at the VA, and I unfortunately can't even tell you how many of them have shared this story with me, going and sharing about the challenges they are having, whether it's post-traumatic stress or chronic injuries or chronic pain, and they are literally given a sack full of pills. A sack full of pills. One is to treat this one is to treat the consequences of that one, and this one is to treat the consequences of that one, the negative impacts of this one or that one. And we wonder why still we are seeing so many of our veterans feel so hopeless to the point that they take their lives. What we are talking about here in this incredibly historic opportunity in re-electing President Trump to the White House is to change this sick care system into truly a health care system that cares about us and that sees and understands what a healthy life actually is. It is, yes, our physical well-being. It is nutrition. It is exercise. It is what does it take to live a truly healthy life? It is mental health and well-being. And foundationally, it is the spiritual health and well-being of who we are as people and how we are faring. So much emphasis is placed on gross domestic product, and you hear these statistics being spouted about how successful we are as a country based on employment numbers and GDP and all of these other things. But are we really truly a happy country? Are we a fulfilled country? What are we truly valuing in our society? In order to bring about this change, yes, it requires a complete new clean slate of new leadership that is committed to these principles and these values. But that only happens with us if we do our part. That only happens if not only you vote, but you're bringing 10 or 20 people with you who are committed to truly making America healthy again, strong again, and peaceful and free again.
Amen. I like this America that's shaping up. You guys like this America that's shaping up?